Good morning, everybody. Thank you for meeting with us. We're open to listen to any questions that you have and answer anything that we can at this time. We're just really excited about the start of the 2020 season in the next month or so. It's been a long off season for sure, but with that said, we'll open it up to you and anything you may have for Nicki or myself.
What kind of concerns do you have immediately about going into the bubble? And obviously, there are some concerns from the NBA players. What's both of your takes on approaching this?
Well, Nicki, I'll let you start and then I'll follow up.
Yeah, I mean, I think I don't have, maybe I err on the side of, understanding that they didn't come to this conclusion without a lot of thought and a lot of perspective on what was feasible medically and to do it safely. I don't think that we're going to be put in a perfect situation. I think there'll be a lot of sacrifices in the bubble. I don't think it's going to run smoothly because we're all going into an environment that some of the things we can plan for and some of them we can't. So I think we're going to have to be quick on our feet and figure things out. My goal is to know that I'm going in with 12 players that want to be there and view it as an opportunity, and to support those if they have concerns, to support those if they're not comfortable for whatever reason with going there. I mean, it's not going to be easy. I think from a coach's perspective, there are challenges in regards to not having fans. There are challenges in regards to how quickly it's going to come upon us. But I'm grateful for the opportunity to coach again. From that perspective, I just have to be understanding it, not just what's going on in the WNBA world, but what's going on in the world in general, and having a sensitivity to that.
Yeah, very well said, Nicki. It's an exciting time, and obviously there's a little bit of trepidation. You want to make sure that you're doing everything you can to ensure not only that our athletes are safe, but my coaching staff is safe and the people that are in that environment are safe. And I know the league is going through extraordinary time right now to make sure that they have every base covered and looking at every scenario and consulting with every medical professional that they can, that the NBA uses as well as the WNBA. And I feel confident that we will be safe. And there'll be protocols before we arrive at said site, and there'll be protocols when we are at said site, and we'll do everything we can on our side to make sure that everybody's safe. And that is ultimately the priority, is the safety of everybody involved. And then if everything goes well, then we get to play some games, and that's the exciting part of the summer for us. And that's what we work so hard to do in the off season, to prepare for this time. So if all those things are in place, so we can pull the trigger and get there safely and play some games, and it's going to be a fun summer.
Coach Nicki, have you spoken to any other players? And if so, what are their overall moods?
Yeah, I mean, in some ways, I would say, they're, as one would expect, these are grown women. They have their own opinions. My goal is to not change them. It's to support them. I have talked to more of our veterans than I have talked to maybe our young players. But I also thought it was important, quite frankly, that during these negotiations that I stayed out of it. This is their time to feel out what they feel is right, individually and collectively as a union, and to know my place. And my place now is now that I know that, they voted to have a season, that the season at this point is imminent, that it's about me gathering information and finding out where each individual player is at. And then meeting them where they're at and figuring out what's the right thing for each player. So I think that range is really big. I think there are players that are like, hey, let's play basketball. Like I've missed basketball. It's what I do. It's what I know. It's where my comfort zone is. I think there are players that, think about the world more holistically and think about, what this means in their life, and whether it's, activism related, whether it's safety related, they're all at different places. And so, it's going to be a gathering process. I don't think, anyone should be surprised when there are players in this league that choose to opt out. Like we have to be prepared, I think, as a league, as a franchise, to support players, with what they're comfortable with right now. So, I think it's wide ranging. I don't think that's an easy question to answer because you certainly have players with very real concerns, and you have players who are just like, let's go. When can I get there? When can I get my medical and my physical and start playing? And, I'm excited about this season. So it's just a wide variety right now.
There's also,
Sorry,
I'm
Chris.
sorry, there's also outside influences going with it as well. It's not just about the pandemic, it's about the social justice. So there's a lot of things that are on players' minds today. It's not just about COVID. So it's a myriad of issues, and we want to make sure that we're supportive of whatever it is that's important to our athletes. I'm sorry, I cut you off, Howard.
No, not at all. I didn't know you were about to go. But first of all, thank you both for doing this. I really appreciate it. Actually, this question is for Nicki. No offense, Chris, but Nicki, I'm wondering, obviously there's caution. Obviously there's concern. But there's also, it would seem to me, tremendous excitement, tremendous opportunity. And I just wonder what you're going through emotionally, thinking about the opportunity to be at the center of the action of something that's really never been done before.
Yeah, I think, once again, I've said this, in some ways very carefully, because I think we're at a time where we really need to think before we speak. And, not that we shouldn't always have been doing that. But I think, understanding that there's no doubt. I mean, like I've loved this game of basketball since the 6th grade. And so opportunity to get back onto the court and do what I love to do it with a group of players that, we worked hard in the off season to get together, all those things that, when I was interviewed post free agency, like those are still feelings that I have, those feelings of this could be really fun. This could be really exciting. I just think it's important that we understand that in the midst of that we have to understand that there are bigger issues. And if we're going to say that it's bigger than ball and promote that as a league, that we have to understand right now that it is bigger than ball. And, so how we speak, how we go into this bubble, how we approach the bubble, how we act in that bubble, how we lend ourselves as an ally to our players. I mean, you're talking about, I don't know the exact number, but you're talking about a league of a lot of the smartest, most accomplished Black female athletes on the planet, who have their own voices, who have their own ideas, who don't need us to lead them. They need us to like walk beside them. They need us to be willing to partner with them and help them continue kind of this momentum that they've built on and off the court about who they are. And so, it's really easy for me to get into coach mode and to start thinking about practice and start thinking, for sure. I mean, this is what we do in coaching. We think about what's in front of us, and we think about what we have, and we think about, well, if a player gets hurt, what's our next move? So we're always prepared to make the next decision, and it's what we love to do. But I think I'm trying to take the approach of trying to find out, what's the most important thing, to all of them right now, and proceed that way, as opposed to just jumping around and doing tuck jumps because I'm excited to coach a game I love again. So I think that's where we're at.
Can I just follow up on that? And it's really for both of you, which you guys announced a few minutes ago that Juneteenth would be a team-wide holiday. And you talked about being an ally, being a partner with the players. I just wonder for each of you, how much that directly came from conversations with your players, from being that ally, from being that partner in a more proactive way.
I think it was really important with everything that's going on, especially here in Atlanta. There's recognitions that are long overdue, and I think this is one of them. And I think the Hawks may have started it on the NBA side. And it's a question of why are we not recognizing the significance of this holiday? And a majority of our staff and our athletes are African American, our fan base is, our community is. And this is very important, but it's not just for us. And we hope that other teams will follow suit. And we hope that they will also become a part of this and recognize the significance and the importance of this day. And I know that a lot of our players are very passionate about it. And so I thought it was very important for us to be engaged, listen, not be tone deaf, and understand our surroundings. And this is a perfect time for us to move forward with that platform.
And in full transparency, when you think about Juneteenth, I had reached out to Renee a couple weeks ago and said, "How are you doing, and how can I help?" That was my text message to her. And she started talking about her platform and handing out water, and that on Juneteenth she really wanted to do something bigger and hand out food. And I said, okay, well, I'll be there both as a volunteer, and I'll be there to support you financially. But I had to look up what June 19th was, and then I remember texting her back and saying, holy cow, like Emancipation Day, this is a big freaking deal. Like, how do I not know that this exists? Because I don't think I'm tone deaf, but I also think that it hasn't gotten the recognition that it deserves. And once I knew what it was, I mean, I had to say back to her, like, that's a big deal. Let's make it a big deal. How can I help you make it a big deal? As you see this as a personal platform for you to do more in our community here in Atlanta.
Thank you both.
Coach, and then Chris, saying all that with COVID and with the issues that are going on around now, you're still a professional organization. So how are y'all going to focus? Because if you go down there and you don't win, that would also come out. So how do you stay to the point of rallying around your team, getting them together? Because once you get together and y'all going to be in close quarters for a long time, being that professional team and trying to get those victories and hopefully that championship that you're trying to get.
I mean, I think that's where it starts with knowing that, when you're going in with players who truly want to be there, that view it as an opportunity, rather than, kind of, okay, I'm going to begrudgingly go because I want to earn my paycheck. But, I think, we're going to make it as good as they want to make it. And there will be challenges. This is a season where, in my opinion, some people will say there'll be an asterisk by this season, just because of what's going on, and it's not a normal season. But to me, like, why can't it be the beginning of something special? We talk a lot about, and I know we're in different times, but if you talk about the 99 lockout year and who was ready to come back on the NBA side from that, and there were players that, certainly not because of being stuck in their homes at a stay-at-home order, but didn't come back in shape and weren't prepared to play because they didn't think they were going to have a season. And then all of a sudden there's a season. And, what people fail to remember with that is, the Spurs won that year, and it kind of started a dynasty. So, this is kind of an opportunity to say, hey, there's going to be some teams that don't really like being in there. Let's figure out how to be the team that takes advantage of that takes advantage of the opportunity, that learns to deal with the problems in the bubble the best, that communicates the best, that stays the course, because there's no doubt it's going to be difficult at times. I mean, we're, as a staff, we're going to be in a hotel room. For my goal is to be there 90 days because I want to play to a championship. So I'm not excited about living out of a suitcase for 90 days in a hotel room. I'm already in, like, okay, I can take a hot plate in. I can take, what am I going to take in and turn that in to my own studio apartment as opposed to a hotel room. So, it will be a challenge, but it might be the team that accepts the challenge, not the team that on paper has the most talent that wins this season. But, so much of this game is mental. So if you stay in a decent place mentally, if we can understand there's going to be a mental health component to being there, and finding ways to be supportive of each other, and understanding our players are going to go through that, whether it's because they're away from family, they're away from significant others. We're ultimately, I think when we look at each other in the eye, everyone's in there is going to be in the same situation. So no team has an advantage from that perspective. Like, we're all going in, we're all going to be away from the people we love. We're all going to be, relying on one another. So, trying to see it once again, as simple as it sounds, do you view this as an opportunity? And that's the way we have to look at it.
That's the first time and only time you will ever hear Nicki say she's bringing a hot plate before she's bringing high heels anywhere. We are on the same
Right.
page. And it is a mindset, Emmanuel. So Nicki and the coaches have been talking with the players a lot. We're trying to do some team building things before going into the bubble. That way our players get to know who one another are. They've done their own Zoom calls. So I think it's really kind of cohesiveness. If you just look at teams that are successful, they have that camaraderie, and that's something that you have to build now, because you don't really have the ability to do that when you're social distance. So we're doing everything we can now to get the right mentality before arriving, at IMG, to make sure that we're ready to go. And there will be ups and downs. There's always undulations to seasons and situations, but it's our job to make sure that we stay focused, for sure.
Now, Coach, I'm sorry. Okay, and Coach, to piggyback off of what Glaze had said, and I know that you all talked about mental health, this could be kind of a lead question. Will there be any type of like sports psychologist or therapist around? Because I know with the time that we are living in right now, it's hard to really focus, and I can only imagine of how the players feel as well. So, and of course for the coaches as well, will there be anyone in place for those players to go and talk to when need be?
And I think that is a league question, but I also know the league absolutely understands the importance of mental health today. Whether it's the pandemic, whether it's the social injustice, the systematic racism, the things that people are confronting head on right now, and in some ways the collision of all these at the same time. I don't think there's any doubt the league knows the importance of that. They've had calls with the players in that area. I think most teams have sports psychologists that their players have gotten to know. And so there'll be, I think, probably a tie-in from the league level as well as team by team level. But it won't get lost in the shuffle. I know that our league understands, even before the pandemic hit, how important mental health is today for professional athletes and, the general population for that matter, right now.
We also have our own team sports psychologist. So if they need to reach out, they can certainly do that via Zoom or phone.
I have a question about pay. I was reading Howard McDowell's story in the New York Times, and it said players have until June 25th to opt in, and they will receive 100% of their salaries. And I also saw something that players that have like issues with like immune systems or like high risk, they can opt out and receive 100% of their pay. What about players that we have 9-10 days until they have to decide, but how much of their pay will they receive if they opt out, and will they receive full pay?
That's all questions you'd really have to direct to the league. Those things have not been clearly defined yet, at least for us. I'm sure the league knows what the answer is, but we've not been shared that yet.
Nicki, you've mentioned the challenges of going into the bubble and all that sort of stuff. From a truly like basketball game coaching perspective, what do you see as the biggest challenges of this format and the whole situation?
Yeah, I think there's advantage, disadvantage. With no travel and no problems with arena availability, and I think we talk about 3 games a week. We certainly at times play more than that. We play 4 and 7 or 5 and 9 pretty regularly in this league. So, I think from a load management perspective, if we can get them through training camp healthy and get them up to speed, those that haven't done a lot compared to those who've played and gone up and down, I think there are advantages of not traveling. You don't have knees swelling on airplanes and things like that in play. So I think from a load management perspective, there are advantages to this. I think, I'm not sure. I've never coached a game in front of no fans. I don't know what the challenge is for that. I just know that both teams won't have fans. So, it's, I think we have to figure those things out when we get in there. I think that there are going to be challenges from a practice time and space, and, learning to share better. We're all creatures of habit in terms of when we want to practice and how much we want to practice and what we want it to look like. And that falls into the sacrifice of, okay, there's 12 teams here now, not two at one site, or a training camp where you're used to having your own space for 15 days. And now there's 12 teams that, all have to do it. So to me, that's the challenge. The challenge is the schedule. The challenge is, what does it look like? What does it feel like? How are we moving around? I mean, I think there are things that'll get answered more the closer we get, and certainly when we get there. But for me, from a balance perspective, like, what is it, how many people are going to be in a training room? Are we going to have our own training room? Like, what about cold tub situation? What about cryotherapy? What about, kind of all those things that you get used to at home? Having the luxury of your own cold tub, having the luxury of being able to go to cryotherapy, and your players, kind of do what they need to do for rest and recovery. So to me, the challenge is just figuring out what that schedule looks like and finding a comfort level in that. I mean, anyone that knows me knows that I am like a machine when it comes to, this is when we practice, this is what it looks like, this is when they arrive, this is when we watch film, this is when we, our time frame for practice. In the preseason, we'll do this amount of practice. In the regular season, and so, that's the hard part. That's where you have to let the OCD go a little bit and say, okay, we're gonna have make it work moments, as Tim Gunn likes to say, on Project Runway, and we're just gonna figure it out.
Going back to no fans, do you guys know if there will be maybe artificial noises for you guys, or you don't know?
Other than coaches yelling, there probably won't be any other noise in there, would be my guess.
Can I add, Coach Nicki, will you be on NC-17, or they're going to mute all the sound so you don't
I'm like a puppy, when it comes to coaches in this league. So, mic me. I think you might be interested in what I have to say. I mean, I honestly, like, I think this could be I try to see the situation as glass half full. And how do we make this cool? Like, how do we make this interactive? How do we figure out how to say, 20 years from now, how about that season 20 years ago when we all went into a bubble and played basketball, and, somehow figure out how to make this interactive, I honestly, I'm not sure every coach would agree to this. I wouldn't care if you mic'd me every game, if there was a way to, for fans to really feel a different experience or something that was unique, or, like, I'm all in, I don't swear a lot. I don't go crazy a lot. I'm incredibly sarcastic. So, I think that comes across if it came to interaction with officials at times, but, maybe we would all be on slightly better behavior too if we were all mic'd. So, I just think that's not my area of expertise. I'll stay in my lane and coach my team. But I just think there could be some really cool, unique ways of making this kind of unforgettable, other than it being, the season of, let's 2020. I think most of us would say, we should have skipped this year on the calendar with everything that's happened.
From a logistics standpoint, can you give us details on kind of what it was like from the shutdown and now from the announcement till you go to camp? What kind of interactions? What are your plans?
Yeah, I think it's the hardest part about the whole thing is simply the uncertainty. And the situation was so fluid, and let's not pretend that we know everything about COVID right now. I was so excited. I'm the first one to send a text to the staff last week when I read that the World Health Organization said, that asymptomatic people weren't passing it. And all of a sudden, 4 hours later, there was a retraction on that. So, there's the way the information has flowed. I think from the shutdown perspective, it was difficult. I think the first concerns were getting players back from overseas, and that was our number one goal then, and them getting into safe environments. And then it was, us all probably having that deer in headlight look at what's going on in the world right now. How did this happen? What in the world is going on? Like almost like a disbelief, because let's face it, nobody on this screen has ever lived through something like this before. So there's no reference point. There's no point of comparison. So, then, in some ways from a coaching perspective, having the draft in front of us gave us something to focus on, gave us something to get excited about. You get through that, and then it's, the season. When are we going to have a season? What can we do with the players leading up to that? How do we organize that? And obviously the toughest part in all of this was getting to 12 players. First we had to get to 15, then we had to get to 12. And there's no coach that wants to cut a player before they've ever had them in camp. We make these decisions not on a whim. We make decisions that we think are going to create a great camp environment where we're going to have competition, and we're going to, see, who fits the best. And, certainly we have a gut instinct going into camp about what we think may happen, but we still let it play out. And so, I think, then it's the hardest part since then has been the flow of information at what's going on, when it's going to happen, when we're going to know more, when there's going to be some certainty, and I think it's the hardest part about that is that I don't think that it's that the league doesn't want to share information. I think it's just been so fluid that they don't want to say it wrong. They don't want to say it and then retract. They don't want to say, this is what we're doing, and then turn around a week later and say, oops. And so I think that's the part that I'm sure from a media perspective, at times I hear people say like, the league isn't saying enough, and then the players speak. But I think what the league is trying to do is control it from a liability perspective, to understand as much as they can possibly understand before they share information, and so, I think that's been the process, and sitting back and seeing like how the union and the league negotiates to get to a point where the majority of players feel that this is the right move, and I think that's where, as a coach, you have to sit back and just say that process has to play out, and I can't really be a part of that.
We have time for one more question.
Obviously, the players have another 9-10 days to inform y'all of opt-outs. Are you aware at this point of anyone who's planning on opting out?
We are not.
All right, we'll have to stop it there. Thank you all for joining. I really appreciate it. Thank you, Chris and Nicki.
Yeah, thanks, guys. Good to see you guys.
Same. Thank you all. Thanks, Kelsey,
You
for
got
setting
it.
up.
Thank you. Bye, guys.